Welcome to Acuboost, an IIG product. Acuboost are IIG's embedded software enhancements for the Acumatica ERP product. Today we're going to go over the material production management product. So I'm going to start this recording in the calculate quantity to produce purchase program. What this program does for all the items in the system will go through, look at the transactions and inventory replenishment settings for the items and calculate the demand. Here, for each item, you will see quantity in purchase order, on sales order, on work orders, in transit, and based on that information, it will calculate demand. In addition, it would show you by warehouse for each item what's the replenishment source entered. You have the ability to look at all the items, or you could put in a specific item and see the transactions in the system for that item. One thing about this program is that this program will go through all the sub-assembly levels. So if you have a kit and that kit has a sub-assembly and that sub-assembly has its own kit, this program will go through all the levels and show you what you need to purchase at any level in that bill of material. Now, based on the calculated quantity, the replenish method, you have the ability to create a purchase order, create a transfer sales order, or a work order, or create a work order and auto schedule. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring up an item, DEC 2500, and the system would show me the activity just for that item and all the components of that item, regardless of how many level dips. Now here we've asked it to show us even the item with zero quantity required, so you have the ability to uncheck that and it will not display any item that has a zero demand. We also have the ability to put a specific ship date and see the requirement for that specific ship date. So if you wonder what you need to ship through next Friday or the end of the month, you can put that date. Or if you want to see what do you need to produce or what do you need to buy to take care of all the orders for a given customer, you could do that. So here in this example, we were looking at this item, DEC 2500, which is a candy cane Christmas decoration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a sales order for this item in the Harvard warehouse. Now, Harvard warehouse is set up as a warehouse that has a replenishment for it, has transfers from Alton warehouse, and in the Alton warehouse is set up with a replenishment source of manufacturing. So as I generate a work order, I generate a sales order for the item in the Harvard warehouse. We'll see a demand here. We'll create a transfer sales order, which will create a demand in the Alton warehouse, and then we'll create the work order, close the work order, and ship the product. So to start this process, I'm going to go to the sales order entry and enter a sales order for that item. So here is the sales order entry program of Acumatica. I'm going to bring up a customer, and I'm going to enter that item, DEC 2500, for a quantity of 4, and I'm going to save the sales order. What this is going to do, this would show me a demand, calculated demand for this item in the Harvard warehouse, which has a replenishment source of transfer. So if I click here and click on generate sales order, what the system would do, this program would do, it would create a transfer sales order in the system. Now this is just create a two-step transfer sales order in the system. If I refresh this, I would see a demand generated into Alton warehouse and manufacturing warehouse. And if I select this, I would be able to select a machine, a work center for the production of the item. And what the system would do if I click on generate work order, will generate a work order for that. So basically you will see you have zero demand at this point because we entered a sales order. For that sales order, we created a transfer sales order for that, which created demand, manufacturing demand, we created a work order. So we're gonna go through and see this transaction. We're gonna close the work order. We'll see the impact of it in the system, then complete the transfer sales order and ship the product out. But before I do that, I will go to the inventory program and I would show the kit specification program for that item, deck 2500. So the deck 2500, as you can see, has components entered. And again, we have added fields to the kit specification program of Acumatica to let you have a yield percentage, to have a scrap percentage, to have a revision, to be able to calculate the cost for the item based on the components that are defined. You also have the ability to issue inventory based on this grouping. So this item has this kit item has this assembly routing linked to it, and in the tree assembly routing, based on the steps, for each step you can tell it what group of items should be issued. So if I go to the routing program in the work order processing menu, I would be able to see that routing, tree assembly routing. And the tree assembly routing, basically, I have 4 steps. So that means they create 4 steps and schedule them, allow me to schedule them on my scheduling board. But notice that the inventory group A is issued in this step, B is issued in this step. This is also a manufacturing step. Now, we also have this concept of generating issue to sales orders steps. So if we wanted to do things, for example, if we want to refurbish some items and we want to load those components or labor into a sales order and invoice them, we could do that. I intentionally left a couple of steps here as issue to sales order. So we'll see how in our system we'll be able to close the work order step into a sales order in the case we wanted to invoice. Now, we also have the ability from the sales order to generate a work order by entering it, by checking this generate work order box, entering a machine and click on generate work order. So work orders can be generated from our calculate quantity to produce program and get auto scheduled from sales order, or just from the menu by running the program, work order entry program. So if I go into the work orders, I would be able to see my work order steps that system generated. And here are the 4 transactions that got created. So this, in the header tab, I have the item that we're manufacturing it for. If it was generated from the sales order entry, I will see the sales order number here. If not, I see the item, I see the routing for it, the revision that I'm manufacturing. And here I'll be able to bring up each one of these work order transactions, which basically has in it the components from the kit specification that is grouped to the link to the group A of that issue. I can remove this from hold, save it, and allocate components, which would basically go ahead and allocate. If it's a lot-based serialized item, I'll be able to do that. If not, basically, I allocate my quantities. I click on release, and the any component that was linked to this manufacturing step number 1 gets issued out of inventory to VIP, so it's no longer available. So I can do my other steps, step number 2, for example. And in step number 2, we have just a labor item entered. And as I mentioned, I specifically left this step to be something that closes into the sales order. And I did that just so I'll be able to demonstrate that as to how we can, from sales order, create work orders. I can close the work order steps into sales order and invoice to customers. So if there's a order that is a work order that's created based on a sales order, we need to perform some task, I can create steps in the manufacturing module and perform the work, load the labor and material used into the sales order and invoice them. So I can release this transaction as well, which basically, as I mentioned, it will let me close them into an existing sales order if I wanted to do that, or create a new order or a new invoice and just invoice them. So here, if there's a transaction for this customer in the system, I'll be able to do that and close this into that sales order transaction. And it would basically show me the items added to an existing sales order that I had into the system that we created to create a demand of 4. We just loaded some labor items into it. So a two-way communication between the manufacturing system and the sales order module. And I basically want to demonstrate. Now, one thing I want to also show at this time is the fact that we have a scheduling board that comes with a drag and drop program. And here in this scheduling board of ours, we have the ability to see each one of the manufacturing steps that got created based on the routing. So I could drag and drop any one of this from one area to the other, make them take longer to manufacture. So if that's what I want to do, I could make them be longer. I can see the status of this one, or if I want to make this one bigger, if I want to change the status of it. Notice that colors are assigned to statuses. So if I move this from hold to setup, it would change the color of that. Or if I change this one from hold to released, it would assign. So we assign colors to statuses, and based on that, and the colors would change, and you can move something from one machine to the other. Now you have views that you created. Each view could have its own filter. Setup could have the view to show only the setup type transactions. You can see only this one shows. Or if I go back to production, it would be the production. If I go back to all, it would show me all the transactions. So you have for each view its own filters, the time interval, every 2 hours, how many days, how many back is forward and backward. So you can have as many of these views as you want and manage the work that needs to be done in the shop. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to come here and then look at my work order steps. So we've closed 2 of the steps. We have another step, packaging. So I could just do the same thing here, remove it off the hold and release it. Now I also have the ability to basically create purchase orders. So if any one of the steps I realize I need to buy some products, it would let me generate a purchase order from here, and it would be linked to back to here. So this again, for the purpose of this demonstration, we're closing it to the sales order to show you how easily you could load things from the manufacturing into existing sales orders that are in the system, if it makes sense to do that for the purpose of billing the customer for the labor. So if you have a job shop and you need to bill the customers for some labor and material, this is how you would load information back from the work that is being done in the shop floor back into the sales order to bill with the item. Or if it's a repair order that you need to do, you could load it into that as well. So another manufacturing step gets closed. Now, if I've gone back to the work order, I have my one step that is not closed, my step number 3. Now, step number 3, I happen to know that that's a manufacturing step. And if I come back to the routing program, you would see that for step number 3, not only I'm issuing stock, it's also the manufacturing. This is the step that all the components that are posted to VIP would get included and would basically at this time would be used to create the kit assembly program. So if I come back to my work order, click on step 3, I can remove it off the hold, and I can allocate the inventory, and I can release it, which at this point, since this is the manufacturing step, it would create the kit assembly transaction, and I can at this time release it and basically create my finished good. So if I come back to my calculate quantity to produce program and click here, I would see that now I have a quantity of 4 on hand. In the Alton warehouse, the manufacturing warehouse. I can go back to my transfer sales order and update that transfer sales order, so inventory would get received into the Harvard warehouse, and I can ship it out of there. So, and of course, the kit specification program here was used to use up and consume all the components that were linked to manufacturing this DEC 2500 item. So I go back to my sales order, and I will bring up the transfer sales order. Sending probably my transfer sales order. And now that I have the quantity in the warehouse, I can create shipment for it. I can confirm the shipment, and I can update the inventory. And which basically what it's going to do now, I can at this point go to my purchasing module and receive the product into my warehouse. So I could now go ahead and basically create a new transaction here, Harvard, and add transfer from warehouse Alton, and selected warehouse add and close, and of course go ahead and release it. And in the so basically now if I come back to this program and I refresh it, so now I have a quantity for available in my Harvard warehouse, and then I could use it to ship the product, just Acumatica's base order shipment process to ship it out from the customer. So with this process, I was able to demonstrate how from this program I can generate a transfer sales order, I can generate a purchase work order. Now, if any item here needs to be purchased, I could just select it, and let's say for this example, select the vendor. Now, even though there was a vendor linked to it in the system, that would get loaded here. Enter demand, and click on calculate purchase order, create purchase order, and it will go ahead and create a purchase order for me. So the system gives you the ability to generate transactions in the system, to handle all your requirements. You have a nice scheduling board that lets you manage your production by setting up different filters. Thank you, and please feel free to call Information Irrigation if you have any questions about this video.